Welcome, Melanie.
Thank you so much for having me, Peter. It's a pleasure to be here.
Tell me exactly what you do in your responsibilities before we get into some of the questions.
Great. So I manage a team of advisors and loan assessors at Women's Enterprise Center, and we work directly with clients, supporting them in all areas of business advising, financing, acting as just a support and resource for them. And then we make also referrals to the other areas, our mentoring program, our skills development, as well, to make sure that they're accessing those resources as needed.
So it's more than just about money.
Oh, much more about money. Yes. Yes. So
talk about that a minute, about what you do.
Yeah. So
beyond the money.
Well, beyond the money, often people think about needing financing for their business. So they may have come to us to apply for a loan. We offer our core loans up to $150,000. And that requires a business plan and or a growth plan and cash flow projections. But when they come to us for financing, excuse me, we also make sure that they're set up for success, and that they have not only the financing, but that they have the skills development. So we have a lot of webinars and training on marketing and financial fitness and HR and all those areas of the business that you need to have running smoothly in order for the business to be successful. We also connect them with mentors. It could be in a peer mentoring circle, or it might be one-on-one mentoring, to provide the support of an experienced woman entrepreneur who's been down the path that they're embarking on, to provide that support and let them know what's ahead. So it's really that holistic support that enables them to be successful in their business, whether they're starting a business or growing a business. And we also provide specialized expertise in exporting and importing, as well as supplier diversity programs for those women who are looking at how to grow their business beyond just their local market.
So you're a financial resource, but you're also a human resource in helping them understand how to spend the money, how to grow and be better at what they're doing. What's the most unusual?
Yeah, very much so.
What's the most unusual organization that has come to you for money?
Well, we have traditional industries where women start business, so service sector, a lot in food production. We really like the non-traditional. So we had a client come to us who was starting wildfire fighting business, providing contract services for fighting forest fires in the summer. That was a very interesting one. We had another one that was starting an excavating company. That was also interesting to see a woman driving an excavator and contracting out her services. So there's really no limit to the ideas that women have. We're also starting to see more requests for funding around tiny homes, which is interesting. People getting into tiny homes. Oh, those little tiny, gosh, would they be 400 square feet, or, you know, just tiny dwellings, which is either on a trailer that you can move or you can plant it permanently on a site.
Okay.
So, seems to be a new idea.
Tell me, how has the pandemic affected you and what you're doing in your business and those people that come to you for assistance?
Yeah, we've seen an incredible increase in demand for our services. And I tell my team members, so I've been supporting and been a business advisor to women entrepreneurs prior to joining Women's Enterprise Center almost 3 years ago. And in the 15 years prior to that, working just with women entrepreneurs, I have a real understanding of the kind of support and advice they need. And so when the pandemic hit, and I've got this surrounded by this great team at Women's Enterprise Center, able to provide so much support, I tell my team members, Women's Enterprise Center, we were made for this pandemic, because we're here to provide, it could be someone, they need someone to talk to. So we listen, we encourage, we support, We help them focus on what they can control. We refer them to resources that are available that will help them get on to the next step. We look at really, how do you get through this and what can you do, and that failure is not an option. And with the emergency funding that's been provided by the federal government for specifically women business owners, we can also provide that emergency funding piece as well, which has been helpful to so many businesses. So it's been a very rewarding and satisfying time during the pandemic, but at times it can be very challenging. And so as a team, we talk about strategies for us to stay positive and keeping an appropriate distance between some of the hardships that are going on, so that we don't actually take on that difficult that people are experiencing. But for the most part, it is very rewarding and personally satisfying for all of our team members, and it's lovely to share it as a team.
So what's the most unusual organization that's come to you for help? Financial help.
For financial help, gosh, we've had such a range. I think it's more a lot of stories in rural communities where businesses that are so central to the community and keeping the community alive. If those businesses shut down, then a piece of the community dies. And so being able to support those businesses, and one of our favorites was an eatery in a rural community on the island, where they needed that funding to be able to retain the staff and to pay their fixed expenses in order to keep it open, because they didn't have the tourist trade to rely on. And as much as locals were supporting the business, it wasn't quite enough to help them through. And so that emergency funding was there to help them. And then we've had product companies and counseling services and all those kind of businesses that are needed in the community that were successful prior to COVID, continuing that they can maintain their business and carry on.
So tell me, with all the programs that are probably available out there, why would someone want to access RRRF?
Yeah, that's a great question, because there are so many programs out there, and you really have to commend the federal government for working so hard to offer a wide range of programs. For women entrepreneurs, many of the programs, so I'm thinking about the rent subsidy, certainly the initial one, but the second one is better, the wage subsidy, the CEBA, Canada Emergency Business Account, they were so complicated, and most didn't apply to women-owned businesses. So the Regional Relief and Recovery Fund is relatively simple. It's a simple application to tell us what are your non-deferrable expenses and what retooling do you need to do to shift your business, and often the case is shifting it to online. And so there's some expenses associated with that. And if it can demonstrate that your business was financially healthy, it was a good business prior to COVID, then that funding is available to cover your non-deferrable fixed expenses. And that's a pretty simple. So, and it's also flexible because it can cover your employee wages, so you don't have to use the wage subsidy program. It can cover your rent, so you don't have to apply to the rent program. And it can cover other fixed expenses such as your insurance, your professional fees, accounting, bookkeeping, any licenses, and office expenses, internet, website, memberships, those fixed expenses that you need to keep your doors open. So then you can focus on just how do you serve your customers in the way they want to be served today, because business has changed and the way you need to deliver your product and services has likely changed as well. And so provides that stability so you can focus on driving the business and responding to the current market needs.
Tell me, is there a typical timeline that someone coming to you with an idea or a plan would take? Is it weeks, months, or is it shorter than that, or does it depend?
Yeah, so two things. If you come to us for a regular loan program, That can be 4 to 6 weeks because we go into the due diligence, and it really depends how prepared you are when you're making the application. If all of the documents are there, so you have a thorough business plan, you have well-prepared cash flow projections, and you have all the supporting documents to present your business idea, then it just takes us the time to review it, which can be 2 weeks, a week or two, if we have everything right there. But often we're waiting for documents. And this is a similar situation with the Regional Relief and Recovery Fund applications. Often the applications that we get are incomplete, and we try as hard as we can to have a checklist at the end to say, here's a list of all the documents that you need to submit. And when the application comes in, if it's missing documents, we have to send an email back and request those documents, and we won't start reviewing the application until we have all of the documents. That way we can sit down. We have the capacity now to get through the application review and assessment process fairly quickly. So, you know, sort of a week to 2 weeks once we have everything. At the moment, if we get a rush of applications, then sometimes there's a queue to wait to get to the assessment process. So really, it's encouraging people to apply sooner rather than later, because the application for the emergency funding is March 31st, 2021. And so if you're applying right at the end and the March 31st, we won't have time to ask you for any additional information if it's missing. You will just not get to be eligible because your application is incomplete. So the sooner people get their application in, we can make sure we have all the documents, and then we can get it through as quickly as possible.
So tell me, who would be the best candidate for an RRF?
Yeah, the best candidate are those businesses that were financially healthy and not experiencing any financial difficulty prior to COVID. So it was a good business. In most cases, we know the economy was good prior to COVID, and many businesses were growing and had lots of plans for the future. So that's the kind of business that this money is intended for. And then looking at the money not as taking on debt during a pandemic, this is good debt because it has very favorable terms. So there's no interest charged on the loan, and you don't have to make any payments until December 31st, 2022. If you're unable to pay back 75% of the amount that you borrow, that would allow you to take advantage of a 25% grant portion, which means if you take 40,000 and you pay back 30,000, then 10,000 is forgiven. But if you're unable to do that, and it will vary business by business, the loan simply rolls over into a 3-year term loan at 5% interest, which is it's a very manageable rate for a small business. It's a fair rate and a good rate in the with most financing that you would get at a bank or a traditional lender. So this is good debt because it is got very good terms. It allows you to continue making any regular debt servicing loan payments. So if you have some financing already, you can use this loan to make those regular monthly payments. And as you do that, you're paying down the debt that likely has a higher interest rate with this new debt that has very favorable terms and converts into a 3-year term loan if you can't meet the, if you can't pay it out by December 31st, 2022. So, you know, people who hesitate to take on debt during a pandemic, I really encourage them to look at this funding. It may help keep the business running until the economy recovers again. And that's very important. I know many business owners are trying to manage on their own resources and their personal resources, which is commendable, but it may not be necessary if they took advantage of this funding. You know, and keep those personal resources as a further backup to help perhaps when the economy picks up again and they can invest in the business at that time.
One last question, Melanie. What is the most unusual application, if you can share this, of an organization or a business plan has been put before you that you actually approved?
One is a guitar shop, and a guitar shop that had a guitar shop that had a very kind of cult-like following, that accessed the funding from us. And eventually, as a result of the pandemic, they did close their shop and they moved everything online, and just really excelled and found a lot of people were buying guitars during the pandemic. And even though they were virtual, they're such specialists in the industry that they could help people find a guitar that suited them perfectly without even having them in a shop to try out the guitar. I think that's just fascinating.
Yeah.
To Women's Enterprise Center is more than just getting the funding. You get just the support. We're offering a quarterly mentoring, peer mentoring circles where the recipients of the funding meet together with a business advisor, and they're able to share stories amongst each other about how they're managing during the pandemic, but also getting that guidance and support from an experienced business advisor. And I think that is really beneficial, to know that you're not alone, that these are difficult, challenging times, and you can get through it. And Women's Enterprise Center is here to support all women business owners in BC get through this pandemic and come out the other side.
That's great. Thank you. My guest has been Melanie Rupp, who is the Director of Loans and Advisory Services of the Women's Enterprise Center. Melanie, thank you so much for taking this time to talk to us.
My pleasure. Thank you so much, Peter. It's been a pleasure.